Hi everyone and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I'm adding another tutorial to my Monster High Cakes playlist with this special Lagoona Blue Chaise Lounge inside surprise cake. This is a great cake to make if you already have a Lagoona Blue doll at home because you can simply sit her on top of the cake when it's all finished. Make sure you click the link on the screen to check out all my other Monster High cakes, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see all of my other creative cake tutorials. Now today I'm using a 10-inch square cake. I've got my cake board, a fondant roller, I've got some chocolate ganache, some yellow buttercream frosting, I've got a mixture of green and blue M&Ms, and I'm using 3 white marshmallows here today. I've also got some petal dust in green, gold, blue, and I'm also using a little bit of Tylose powder. I've got some turquoise fondant, some light blue fondant, and a little bit of yellow fondant. I've got a large serrated knife, a few fluffy brushes for my petal dust. I'm also going to be using an extruder today. This is a really great tool and I'll put a link at the bottom of the screen where you could buy these. And I'm using the attachment that's going to give me really fine strips of fondant. I've also got 2 circle cutters, one that's a little bit smaller than the other. I've got my pliers as well as about 6 or 7 wooden skewers. I've got my palette knife, offset spatula and a little bit of flour glue. So let's get started. The first thing I need to do is carve up my cake, and to start with I'm going to cut my cake all the way down the centre. Now this side of the cake is going to be the seat, and I need to divide it in 2 by cutting it down the middle on its side, and just neaten the top by just trimming off the very top crust of the cake. These 2 pieces are going to form the seat of the chair. So now I'm going to stack them on top of each other and just trim off about 1 inch off the top layer, because this is where I'm going to sit the back of the chair on. So now with the other side of my cake I need to also divide that in 2. One of these pieces are going to be used as the backrest, and you can see it fits nicely into this space here, and the other piece is going to add some more height to the seat. Again, I'm just going to trim off the top layer of the cake, and once I position it back onto the other pieces of cake, you can see that it overhangs a little bit, so I'm just going to trim it down so that it's nice and flush, and reassemble it to make sure all the pieces are fitting nicely together. Now to create a little cavity for the inside surprise, I need to cut a rectangle out of the second layer of the cake. This is where I'm going to hide my mixture of green and blue M&Ms. And now again I'm just going to reassemble all of my pieces of cake, and I'm going to use the little rectangle that I cut out from the second layer to create the side of the Chaise Lounge, and I'm just going to trim it so I get the right size. Now I'm going to add my buttercream frosting to stick all the layers together. Once I've added my second layer, I'm going to pour in all of my M&Ms, and then continue to stack the cake, closing it up with the back section and adding the side of the Chaise Lounge. Now for the back of my Chaise Lounge I don't really want a straight edge, so I'm going to just use my knife and carefully run it along the back of the cake, creating a little bit of a wave look, and I'm also going to smooth the side arm of the lounge by just rounding off the corner. Now to get the nice round look at the top of the arm of the Chaise Lounge, I'm going to add my marshmallows here. So I'm going to use a bit of my chocolate ganache to stick them onto the cake. I'm just going to line them up one after the other. And now it's time for me to cover the entire cake with my chocolate ganache. Once I've covered the entire cake with my ganache, I'm going to insert my wooden skewers along the back and side edge of the cake, just for some reinforcement support. I'm just going to trim off the excess with my pliers. The cake's now going to go into the fridge for about 15 minutes to become nice and firm. Now I've got my cake out of the fridge and it's firm to the touch, And I've got my spatula sitting here in some boiling water. I'm going to take it out, wipe off the excess water and smooth the spatula over the top of the ganache. This is going to smooth out any of the rough edges. I'm going to do this until the whole cake is nice and smooth. Now I'm going to transfer my cake onto the cake board so that I can start covering it with my fondant. So I'm going to start by covering the back of the cake, and I've rolled out my turquoise fondant, and before I can put it onto the cake I'm just going to put a thin layer of my flour glue onto the cake and then carefully lift up the fondant and position it onto the cake, smoothing it down and trimming off the excess. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the side of the Chaise Lounge. Now to create the scaly look of the Chaise Lounge, I'm going to use my 2 circle cutters, and I'm going to cut big circles out of my turquoise fondant and smaller circles out of the light blue fondant, and then I'm going to assemble them by sticking the small circle onto the big circle. I'm going to need quite a few of these because this is what I'm going to use to cover the entire Chaise Lounge, so I'm going to go ahead and prepare all of my little scales. Once I've got all my little fish scales for Lagoona's Chaise Lounge, I'm going to start sticking them onto the lounge, and I'm going to overlap them as I go. To do the corners of the lounge, I'm just cutting the scales in half so I get a nice straight edge that I can put up into the corner. Once I finish covering the lounge with the scales, I'm going to add a little bit of Tylose powder into some of my yellow fondant. The Tylose powder is just going to add a little bit of strength so that when it comes out of the extruder it's not going to break as easily. So I'm just going to put the fondant into the extruder and start to twist it and squeeze out these very thin strips of fondant. Once I've got quite a few tassels created with my yellow fondant, I'm going to add a little bit of the flour glue to the bottom half of the front and side of the Chaise Lounge, and then stick on all of my tassels. Once I've stuck all my tassels onto the lounge, I've rolled out a very long piece of yellow fondant and I've just folded it in two and I'm twisting it around to create a nice rope effect, and then I'm going to adhere this to the front and side of the cake. I'm also going to add another piece of this rope feature to the back of the Chaise Lounge. At this point you could leave the cake as it is, but I'm just going to add a little bit more definition to the fish scales by adding my blue and green petal dust. I'm also going to add some of the gold petal dust to highlight the rope and the tassels. And once I make Lagoona Blue nice and comfortable on her Chaise Lounge, I'm going to cut into the cake to reveal the inside surprise. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of how to make a Chaise Lounge for your Lagoona Blue doll. This cake can be adapted to suit any of the dolls you already have at home by changing the pattern of the Chaise Lounge. If you're a Big Monster High fan, you'll definitely want to check out my tutorials on how to make a Claudine Wolf cake or a Frankenstein cake, as well as many of the other characters. If you enjoyed my tutorial, don't forget to give it a like and a share. If you do make any of my cakes, be sure to share them with me. I'd love to see them. You can do so on my Facebook page. I'm also on Pinterest, Instagram and Twitter. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can see all my creative cake tutorials as I release them. And as always, thanks for watching.